we have a very crucial
Oh, yeah.
knower of ball and enabler of what I would call the American dream in
Oh, yeah.
2026. I'm talking about Acquire.com's founder. Acquire.com is the largest startup acquisition marketplace on planet Earth. Okay. Helped over 2,000 founders get acquired, sell their business, over $500 million in closed transactions. Over 500,000 people in registered buyers on the platform. We need him in here. Andrew, founder of Acquire.com, get inside this show, sir. We need you in here. Yeah.
I know. So I appreciate it.
Brother, this conversation has been a long time coming. You know, I have known you on the internet since this thing was micro Acquire. And now, you know, we've gotten here, you've got such an official domain and name, and you guys have been helping founders get from A to Z. And here's my take, Andrew. Of course, what you've built is incredible, but I don't think enough people know the processes and things you have in place to help founders navigate this kind of unknown, murky process that so many want to get to. I would appreciate just starting out here. Give us some perspective on all you guys do with education, all you guys do with being reachable to help founders kind of navigate this unknowable process unless you've done it before.
Yeah, definitely. When I started Acquire, I previously sold a business of my own, and going through that process was super confusing. It was pretty opaque. Felt like a lot of the stuff was kind of held behind gatekeepers. So one of the main things I always wanted to do was build a company that made something that a lot of people don't know about, really easy to understand. So we do everything. We do webinars. We create a lot of content on our blog. We write about every single topic you could think of for acquisitions. We have a podcast where we interview other founders that have sold. We ask them about pitfalls or hiccups just to get an understanding of what it was really like. And we do like 10 other things beyond that. But a big part is just educating, because acquisitions are hard. And if you go through the process and make mistakes, those mistakes can be super costly. And so anything we can do to reduce those mistakes, we try to do.
Wow. What are you seeing right now on the platform as far as e-commerce acquisitions, the attributes that make up those companies, or kind of like this through line that you're seeing that is kind of synonymous with those?
Yeah, I'd say a big one is being realistic on valuations. So we're seeing e-commerce businesses sell between 2 to 4 times net profit. Businesses that aren't selling are ones where, let's say there's a lot of inventory just kind of sitting over. There's no clear demand from customers. E-commerce businesses that get like a ton of offers, and we've been selling a lot of these, are ones with recurring revenue models. We had one just today that was like a niche coffee brand sell. That was pretty cool. But anything that has recurring is kind of the way to go right now with some of the acquisitions we're seeing.
Let's go.
I love that you walked through some of the math there, Andrew, because obviously when I started in 2014, ecom was in a different place. And then, we had the hot period of 2020, 2019, et cetera, just afterward. And I still know several of my friends who have successful businesses. They may be just into 8 figures, or they may be, mid to high 7 figures. And they're still hoping for, some kind of 10x, et cetera, from days gone by. Do you ever experience people coming in expecting one number and then seeing reality, and then just helping them through that? Do you ever experience that on your side?
Yeah, that's literally like 90% of what we do. Like everyone has a friend that sold for like 5 times revenue or something like that. Yeah. And businesses do sell for, astronomical multiples. But those are generally outliers, and it's not the norm of what most businesses sell for. So a big part of what we do at Acquire is just resetting expectations, giving them a realistic view into what they could potentially sell for. And a lot of times it's still life-changing. It's just different from, maybe what you might hear about in a big headline or something like that. And then, we no longer have like the Thrashios or, some of the big roll-up brands, and, where a lot of, important metrics don't matter. So it's kind of been like a reset to reality, so to speak.
Yeah.
So on the platform, there's not just e-commerce. I know we're just talking about e-commerce. There's also software. There's also newsletters. Are you seeing a specific business niche on the platform that is kind of exploding? And how are people, or how should people be building into that?
I'd say newsletters is a
Yeah.
big one that we've been
Newsletter.
seeing. Yeah, we see a lot of, software companies, agencies, even e-commerce brands acquiring newsletters if the
Mhm.
audience matches. But yeah, I mean, the majority of our business is software. We do a lot of agencies as well, and then obviously e-commerce. But newsletter is a new category that I've been super excited about.
Nice.
That is compelling to me because newsletters, I mean, in my mind it's still something that's budding, that somebody can have obviously be fully employed in and have a good small business in, but I have never thought that much of newsletters being an acquirable category. I know of some kind of top end examples, but you're seeing more and more of this, and even people on the e-commerce side acquiring newsletters if the audience fits, etc.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, some of the newsletter businesses that we see are incredibly profitable.
Wow.
Doing hundreds of thousands. We've seen a few doing millions in profit per year. So they're legit businesses. Just the operations behind them are a lot simpler than say e-commerce business or software company. And that's why they're so attractive is, they're generally they have much less moving parts than other types of businesses.
That's a good point. Good
Yeah,
point.
it is.
Probably
Yeah.
lower headcount too.
Yeah. Are you seeing any specific niche within newsletter break out a lot? I think a lot of people always talk about, finance for YouTube is a really big one because the CPA is always so high. But is there a specific category in the newsletter space where you're like, this is huge?
We see it kind of everywhere. It really is going to come down to the profitability of the
Yeah.
newsletter. But we see a lot in like tech, AI. We've seen some around like pets. We've seen some around travel that have been doing really well. So I guess, if I had to, describe my like ideal example of a newsletter, it'd probably be like a specific niche that's
Mhm.
attractive and has, businesses that are, really active in that space. So just, pets as an example. And that audience is super engaged and the business is profitable.
Got it.
Andrew, talk to me about the agency side. I bring this
Yeah.
up because I've played on every side of our industry in e-commerce. I've got friends, brand owners. I've got friends, agency owners, operators, everywhere. A lot of times, the common trope is, well, if you're going to sell a service business, you're going to sell an agency, not a great multiple. Not going to be life changing. You got to hold on to the thing forever. Or, there's just a lot of common tropes like that. Taylor Holiday over at CTC, they just recently had an exit, got acquired, and he has often said, actually, if you can be tech forward, if there's a few things that you can combine there, actually, you may get a better exit than being on the brand side. You have any perspective on that for what you see happening at agency side inside of Acquire?
Yeah, a big one is productizing services. Like we helped a design company recently sell, and they had a productized design service where you pay like $4,000 a month and you get unlimited designs. I guess like the theme would be anything you can do to make your revenue more predictable. Like in e-commerce, you have subscriptions for certain types of products. Those businesses are great. Same thing for agencies, where if you have a service where maybe you're commonly doing that same service, but you're pricing it individually per customer, try productizing it and have a recurring model.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I've backed into this with my good friend here, Chris, a ton. That I think subscription is the future of.
he's always beating this drum. Always.
I'm always about it. I'm glad you're bringing the data to support me.
Yeah, if your goal is to sell, I mean, I think on the data side, we obviously see more acquisitions for recurring or subscription revenue businesses. But the sheer number of offers that we see, I think, is the most compelling part. Yeah. Where if we take a business to market, let's say it's an agency or e-commerce business, we'll see maybe like 2-3 offers at most. But if it has a recurring revenue part of the business, we'll see like 10 plus. Like the sheer demand from buyers for businesses like that, it's uncomparable to other business types.
That is significant.
100%. Yeah. Like if it's some of the key advice that we give to, a lot of founders when we meet, if they don't have a recurring component in the business, to see if they could potentially model one out, or if there's any
Yeah.
opportunities where they can add one. Just depending on if they're looking to sell immediately, or if they have like, 12 months that they can, retool the business. Because if they do successfully, the outcome is significant, because that's how you really get the higher multiples too. Like when you hear businesses selling for, outsized multiples, the way that you get there is you have multiple buyers bidding up the price. And if you only have like one or two offers,
Yeah.
it's really hard to get, the maximum valuation.
Yeah. Do you,
Go
do you have
ahead.
any businesses right now you're looking at in e-commerce where you're kind of seeing it from afar, where you'd say, hey, this is a really great business, I would love for them to go through and eventually sell and acquire, where you're kind of looking at them, you've seen them scale for the past couple of years and you're like, come on over, time to sell, let's go.
Yeah, I thought the coffee brand that we helped sell was pretty cool. I love
Nice.
coffee, and I feel like I understand that product. I got a buddy that I keep in touch with quite a bit. He has like these little pods that you put into laundry, and it makes your clothes smell really good.
Yeah.
The business is growing like crazy. I think that's a cool company.
Yeah.
I think anything that kind of is involved in pets seems to do really well. There's a few that we meet with from time to time in that space. And then some others is, just soap and stuff you use daily at home. I think those are great businesses. But I think for me, anything that's, really profitable and growing a lot, I think is super interesting.
Well,
Nice.
what I love about what your marketplace enables is I have so many friends that they've had successful e-commerce businesses. They want to practically get to a sale someday. They have zero clue, literally
Yeah.
zero clue how to actually get an offer. Like, who would I talk to? Is it somebody in my network? Like, how is this thing going to actually happen? What I love is that you've got all these stories about people even getting 2 offers. That is awesome. That's much better than zero.
Yeah.
Give me perspective on when people come to you and they're like, hey, we want to list to sell, etc. What are common pitfalls?
Yeah.
What negates somebody like, hey, this is not for you, not for now? Is there anything that people experience coming in the door that are regular and usual and come up again and again when you're helping people sell?
Yeah, I'd say number one is having clean financials. So having a P&L broken out with, revenue, expenses. I know it sounds pretty basic, but it's essentially a requirement from a lot of buyers, and they can't
Yeah.
evaluate the business properly without that. Documenting processes, SOPs, if you have them, that's another big one. Thinking through transition, if you can stay in the business, what sort of support will you provide once the deal closes? Anything you can do to just lower the risk on the acquisition to buyers. And then just expectations, like having realistic valuation expectations is huge. If you go to market and you're expecting like a massive multiple that's higher than what your business is worth, it just puts buyers off quickly. So those are probably the big ones.
Wow.
I'd love your thoughts on the SaaS side
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
the world. We end up talking about AI every day simply because e-commerce is, I would call it tech adjacent. It's enabled by tech. It's anything that's happening there directly affects everything going on over here. And there's been a lot of chatter, sometimes it's on the happier side, sometimes it's on the doomer side. SaaS is going away and
Yeah.
all these things. I don't necessarily think that. I really think that the enablements of AI are going to allow the clear winners in our space to only get better and do more. That's kind of my thought. But give me your perspective with Claude and everything that's happening with Codex and all of the things. Is SaaS going away? I mean, I would imagine you see software getting bought every day, I would imagine. But what's your
Every single
perspective
day.
on that world?
Yeah, I think there's multiple sides to our marketplace. Like one side, I think is going to be heavily impacted by AI is going to be like the really tiny software projects. Let's say it's doing like, because some of the businesses we help are really small. I'm talking like $500 in revenue per year,
Yeah.
just a handful of users, stuff like that. I think those are in for an interesting period. Because if you can just vibe code something and it's faster to get that platform out than acquiring it from the founder, I think that makes a lot more sense. We still see a lot of activity there, but I think that's where most of the impact is going to go. But on the businesses that are doing hundreds of thousands or say millions of revenue, we've actually seen more interest.
Wow.
So that side has grown and the smaller side has declined. And my guess, I've kind of stayed away from having like strong opinions on this because I just don't know. I see both sides were like, yeah, AI is going to take away SaaS and everything completely, and then the other side where some truth is probably in the middle. But what I'm getting at saying is, I think with AI, it's made things a lot easier to build, obviously, but I think the hard part of building the business is still in place, and I think that's just become more obvious. So for a lot of the buyers that we work with, they're looking to acquire product market fit, profitability of a business. And you unfortunately can't just prompt like, hey, let me get a SaaS business. It's doing like hundreds of thousands in revenue. If that ever changes, I think, my opinion might shift. But again, like the pre-revenue stuff, I think is completely toast. And then the upper companies and businesses with, meaningful revenue, meaningful customers, there appears to be just more demand than ever for those.
Wow.
That's a really interesting perspective. I love.
Do you think, kind of how you're thinking about this? Is there a business, you're seeing it from afar a little bit, where you're focused on acquire exclusively. If you see some businesses and you're like, gosh, I wish someone would be building this right now because it could get acquired in 2 years, 3 years from now for an insane multiple. I really wish someone would do this because this is just a blue ocean. Are you seeing anything specifically?
That's an interesting question. I see a lot of really cool companies every single
Yeah.
day. I saw this really interesting business that was like a marketplace to rent NVIDIA GPU chips. That was cool.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. They actually got quite a few offers on the business and sold earlier last year. I think that's obviously a sick business.
Yeah.
But I think anything with like network effects, like a lot of interesting mobile apps have been coming in to acquire, which is, in my opinion, pretty easy to maintain and operate. But these businesses are doing, hundreds of thousands in revenue with just one founder. So I'd say something along that lines. I always like simple, profitable businesses, and that seems to be an interesting area I've seen increase.
Yeah.
Simplicity is mastery.
I would agree.
Tell me about this, Andrew. Man, I know you guys have been doing a lot, and you're only going to continue to develop. Man, what excites you about 2026? What do you guys have on your roadmap? What are things that get you excited when you get out of bed and you look forward to bringing into the world when it comes to helping founders here and what you do with Acquire?
Yeah, I would say, just getting to be a part of that moment with founders when they're popping champagne and celebrating is a pretty cool job. Like I was on a FaceTime call with a founder, and he was signing the asset purchase agreement. He had, his family with him, and I got to be a part of that. That's what fires me up. In terms of like the roadmap, we've been working on a cool analytics product that, you connect Stripe and you get a valuation of what your company's worth. And as you grow or, customers churn, the valuation adjusts. But what fires me up is just continuing to do what we do and how founders get acquired.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Colin, before Andrew gets out of here, I want to make sure that we get all the information out, where people should go, follow, start talking to his team, etc. Anything else on your doc we should hit before we let our man go?
No, I really do think you guys are doing an incredible job. And obviously, I've used the software personally to get acquired. And I cannot emphasize how mind-boggling scary it was before I used Acquire, and how just crazy confused I was going everywhere. And then I went through Acquire, and it was a very simple process. So if anyone is actually thinking about, going through this process, I would really recommend it. It's truly unbelievable.
Well, appreciate that.
I wish that this had existed in 2016. My first little coffee business. We were looking to sell it, and then we didn't know who to talk to. We just started reaching out to other people, and then, it got murky, and then we ended up, they wanted to call it partnering. And, it was a strange thing. And, we had a nice little payday from that, but I think if you guys had existed back then, it would have been a lot easier for us. I see what you guys are doing as an absolute net good for everybody in our space, and an enablement to really live out what we all want, which is to, have a successful business, get a nice payday, and ride off into the sunset in whatever manner is fitting. Andrew, before you go, man, tell us, where can people find you? How can they start the process for getting inside of the marketplace and selling? Just give us all the details on that, if you would.
Yeah, just go to acquire.com. You can click, join now as a buyer or seller and submit your business. Or if you're a buyer, you can sign up. We have over 2,000 listings to check out.
Wow. Awesome. We appreciate you, my man, and we look forward to talking with you again.
Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome.
Thank you, man. Wow.
Sweet.
This is great.